What's up everybody, Rob from Mork Mischief back at it. I got another project here, Ghazghkull Thraka. Like I have a little kitten back there. She's just being a little squig, don't worry about her. And hope everybody had a good Orktober. I certainly did. It was very busy. I had two projects keeping me very busy. The Stuka Dive Bomber, WAAAGH Blasted Jet, which I did a video for as well, and that actually placed, well, it didn't really place. It got mentioned, got an ad mention, best plane in Mr. Modular Orks Death from Above contest. And then I did the Rick and Morty shock jump dragster. You know, you cut a dragster in half, you get two dragsters. That project also was pretty sweet. Finished that up at the tail end of Orktober, and that one also got an honorable mention in the 40k Ork community contest. So I'm happy to be able to be in those contests. It was really fun to participate, my first contest ever, and it was just, I don't know, it's fun to be given a prompt or like a, you know, you box somebody in a little bit and then they find some creativity within that box. I don't know, I like that, it's fun. So after those two big projects, I was trying to figure out what my next project would be. And my wife suggested a big boss, because I haven't made a big boss. And the biggest boss that there is Ghazghkull Thraka, I don't remember it all, von Richtenstein III. Thraka, and this guy is pretty sweet. It's a badass model, but I wanted to make my own, so I wanted to make a Grot version. I've been wanting to make this for a long time, and here he is, not painted yet, but he is otherwise ready to go from a kitbash standpoint. Came out pretty sweet. As you can see, the size is not too bad, not too far off. Normally I'm, you know, modeling for complete disadvantage. You know, I've always thought that the actual Ghazghkull, although it is an amazing model and beautiful, it's a little small, a little bit small. I think it could be just a little, maybe like 5-10% bigger. Because like, look at this baby dreadnought. I know he's supposed to be like based on dreadnought. I would show next to the actual dreadnoughts, but of course they've been eaten and consumed for this guy. So both my dreadknight and my dreadnought, my Redemptor dreadnought, I think is what it is, with the giant plasma cannon and the gun hand, they have been consumed for the Grot Revolushun. So they're no more. I'm getting off topic. What the hell am I talking about? Let's just go ahead and get into this kit bash. And this time I actually, there's actually going to be some building in the build video, unlike some of my previous ones where it's mainly just kind of a review. But this one's gonna be some actual building. And you know, got my squig here is comfortable, so we're set in, we're locked in. Let's go ahead and get stuck in as well. And while we're at it, obviously pound and slam and break a boy that smash hammer that like and subscribe button, and let's get to it. We'll get started here. I've got this giant pile of models, and it gets bigger. I probably pooled from more than are just sitting there on the right, but that's where we started anyway. And then we've got the main stuff here in the middle. So we've got Ghazghkull, obviously that's what I was shooting for, so I've got him sitting there on the left on the paint pot. And then I've got what I was kind of picking from. I was going to make a Grot who was in a baby carrier, and that's why I got the Grey Knight, Dreadknight there. That was an eBay rescue. They're all eBay rescues really, but the Battle Sister, didn't actually use her. I did chop her in half, so I got that going for me, but didn't use her at all, even though I thought I was going to use at least the controls maybe, because they're smaller than obviously the Astartes size baby carrier controls that come with the Dreadknight, but ended up making my own. Then we also had the Redemptor Dreadnought there on the right that I used the legs from, and then part of the shoulder as well. I like the hand on it, it is cool, and I like that it has a minigun. Anyway, I ended up using parts from it, and then also parts from the Dreadknight as well. And then one of the deffdread arms. I thought I might use more than one, but ended up just using one, and then I ended up making the iconic Ghazghkull power claw thing out of a bunch of power saws and claws from that deffdread, which was my plan all along. So it ended up looking really cool, and we'll get that to here in a second. Cool, so as you can see, the Dreadknight is quite a bit taller than Ghazghkull Thraka, so I kind of had to saw him off, cut him off at the knees, and just have him walk around on his knees. You can see in this other picture, like Gary Oldman in Tiptoes, he actually looks, you know, almost the same height. So that's kind of what I was using the base on. And then I ended up not using those legs at all and using the red legs. And then I had this plan to make my own minigun to replace that tiny little baby minigun that's sitting there on the claw. It looks cool. I'll use it for something else for sure, but obviously ended up not using that and making Gorkonaut's gun into a gun. So here is the Klaw as well. I just took a bunch of deffdread claws and then, you know, arranged them into the spacing and pattern of Ghazghkull's own claw. So I knew I wasn't going to use this minigun, but I was like, it's so cool, I can use it for something. And then I was like, oh, it actually fits perfectly into this little bracket that comes on the top of the dreadnought. But in the end, I don't know, it doesn't look very orky. It looks kind of, I don't know, it doesn't really work. So I ended up not using it at all. It'll find a home. So here is Mork's Roar, which is the giant mini cannon that Ghazghkull typically uses, and it is made from a Killacan. As you can see, he's got his little smile there still, and then I just basically sawed off the top of it and put the bit from the Ghazghkull on top of it. That's kind of basically, it kind of looked pretty decent as is, and I just kind of made a couple of modifications from there. Here you can see a size comparison between it, the minigun that I made, and the tiny little baby minigun that came with the Redemptor Dreadnought. But yeah, I thought the Redemptor Dreadnought had some nice kind of orky bits and plates to it, so I used the shoulder on it, and I used a couple of other bits on it. I just think it looks a little more kind of chonky and beefy and more orky than the Dreadknight, which has more kind of like, I don't know, it's got like Latin phrases and it's got this sort of gothic architecture about it. So, and then look away if you're squeamish. I absolutely destroyed this plasma cannon and then didn't use it at all. I mean, I chopped right through the middle of it. It's rough, but RIP, I'll use it for something. So as I'm working through the Mork's Roar arm, you can kind of see the back side of it, or the bottom side, sorry, of the Killacan with this big gaping hole. So I put a piece of plastic card, I think 2 mil there, roughed up the sides, and then you can see it's kind of cool. There's in conjunction here, the Redemptor Dreadnought shoulder on the top that's magged, and then there's the Dreadnought bit there in the middle, and then the deffdread bit underneath there, utilizing the elbow and hydraulics of the deffdread, which look very orky. So a bunch of pieces working in conjunction there on the Mork's Roar arm. And here's where the body parts start to add up. Whenever I see other people's videos and like pictures and stuff, they always look so organized. I'm always very jealous. This is the pile that starts to form. It's a junkyard. I'm a mech. This is what happens. But I started using that 1x2x3 thing, the 1, 2, 3 block, and I like that. It's nice for building. So things are starting to come together. I've cut out the Space Marine baby who was sitting in there, got the shoulder straps to the side, and then I've got the arm. So we've got a working Mork's Roar arm, and we're starting to get down here, starting to get some action. And I started magnetizing everything. I mean, A, because it's fun, but B, it helped during the build process with something this big that I knew I was going to be posing in a weird way. I kind of just magnetized everything so that I'd be able to repose it while I was building it, and then I was like, if it ends up being static at the end, I don't really, that's kind of the end game, but it makes it easier to paint and easier to take apart and keep kind of reposing and stuff. So the Redemptor Dreadnought's left arm, the Klaw arm, also got sacrificed to Gork and Mork. I did end up not using any of it as well. You can see I ended up using the deffdread, one of the deffdread arms, and then I had to take this back part, which I loved, with all these hoses coming off of it from the dreadnought. So I had to kind of grind off pieces there and make that fit, and then that beefs up the upper part of the deffdread arms. If you look at deffdread arms, they're very spindly and almost like spider-like. They're so thin, so I kind of had to beef them up a little bit, even though, they came from an orc piece, but, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. So here you can see my technique for magnets. I take the first magnet and I glue it down, and then I take the second one, once the first one is set, take the second one and let it just stick as a magnet on top, and then I put glue there, and then I have a accelerant on the piece that I'm about to adhere, and then I put that accelerant accelerant sprayed piece against the back of that magnet, let it set for a second, and then I push at an angle to the magnetization, and then there we go. So that's how I get 2 magnets to be where I want them. It's just kind of something I came up with. I'm sure other people have other better techniques, let me know, but that's what I do. And then I kind of seal it in along the edges there, because they're less likely to come apart when you have them up on the edges and all that kind of stuff. Started using baking soda as well as an accelerant. Mixed results. I still will use it. It's good for use indoors. Because I use spray accelerant that I have to use in the garage, and I kind of pop outside, use it real quick, and then pop back inside. So I do like the fact that I don't have to go anywhere. It doesn't work as well. It's a little bit slower. It's a lot messier, as you can see here. but it does leave this kind of cool rusty effect, which I do really like in certain aspects, especially when I'm using something that's very clean, like a magnet from the 21st century that doesn't really fit with the rest of the aesthetic. So this kind of roughs it up and does the job for me, so I do like that. And then the legs I knew were going to be really difficult. So at this point I had the entire upper torso down, more or less. It'll change a little bit, but then the legs I knew were going to be a little tough because I had to get them in a pose. I had to get them kind of nice and tight in there. This thing was already getting pretty big, so all that meant that I was using some blue tack and getting this right in the correct pose that I want. And then I decided, you know, I don't really want him to have like splayed. It's getting too big. If I do splayed, he's going to be gigantic. So maybe we'll do him kind of stepping a little bit, like almost kneeling. And then I also kind of wanted something happening, something cool on the base. You can see I started off here with a Termi and ended up going with a runt herd. I thought that was more appropriate with a Grot Revolushun, so that's what we started doing here. And then I started going for the posing on the leg. So I got the first one down relatively simply, just a ton of glue and accelerant. This I wanted to do very quickly, and so the green stuff, it takes a while, and then you have to hold it in that shape kind of overnight and let it sit there. Whereas accelerant and super glue, especially this thick gap filling glue, it does the work in seconds and gets the pose down exactly the way you want it, and it's not going to change. Like once it's locked in, it's locked in. So I like that. So I started off here and got this right angle done pretty well. See a little bit more sealant on the top part because I knew I was going to do another set of glue here. You can see a little bit of the cod piece and ass and whatnot of the marine that's still lingering in there for now, and then I'll grind that off. And then yeah, we've got the foot, so I've got the foot kind of going up, so I had to take off that toe and repose it. The rest of it I just kind of bent a little bit, but this one I knew I had to get in there and actually repose it, so I took it off of its hinge and reposed it, kind of clipped off a little bit of the scum and whatnot. And then at this point, honestly, it's, you know, it's like 90% done. I did end up reposing and kind of changing things around a little bit, but like this is like a 90% solution right here. Like, there's no grot in there yet and all that kind of stuff, but this is a lot of progress. I think this was in like one day, but pretty cool. So at this point you can see the size comparison where we're at for now. With the arms up and stuff, it's considerably bigger than Ghazghkull, so that's why I ended up having to repose everything. So then I just use a Dremel to, of course, remove the ass and testes of the Astartes, and then also kind of that weird stamping that they had on their diaper. Obviously I just want a plain diaper for my guy. And luckily for me, the Old World Goblin kit, which I have a ton of now, the rider legs I knew were gonna fit perfectly right in there, so just went ahead and popped those babies in there. So then I knew I had to get rid of these lowercase t's that they got sitting there, and skulls and iconography, whatever else the Humies think are cool to put on stuff. None of that stuff's cool. So we went ahead, and I believe this is from the battle wagon, maybe one of the gun pieces there to cover up part of it as I grind it down, obviously. And thankfully I didn't use those 2D tusks from the Gorgonite because they ended up being perfect ears for my Grot iconography that he has on the top. Just looks just choice. It's absolutely perfect. And then the 3D horns I thought were, I mean, they've been sitting in my bits box for a long time, also from the Mork. Knew I had to use those. Those were like no question. I was like, those, you know, blank nipples are sitting right up there. They need some tassels, so went ahead and put those bad boys on there. Another eBay rescue was a old Commisah, but I've been planning on using this as my Grot piece for a very long time, so that was an easy, just kind of chop up a Old World Goblin, chop up a Commisah, put the ear back on, good to go. So I had a Grot glyph on the left side and I wanted a matching boss glyph, so I made one of those out of plastic card. Shout out to the community for helping me out, and that's ended up completely covered up basically by the cables. That's alright on the Klaw side, but it is under there, and I've used this same technique a couple more times since then, so pretty cool. You just take some basic geometric shapes and you're able to make a fist and you're good to go. You can do kind of the same thing for a lot of different glyphs. I've been making my own glyphs just like the settlers used to back in olden times. So here you can see, pop that glyph right there in the center of the left thigh, and then I've got the 3 Grot symbol there on the other side. And another little cute little addition I made. Shout out to Drunken Orc for this design idea as well. The track guards that they have on the battle wagon, you just make those out of bits of plastic card, bar or whatnot from plastic card, and it looks really cool. So I put that little accent on the bottom of my Mork Spore. And then to Commisah's left arm, which was the last bit of his body to come together, is just this one from the old world goblins. I had to use this guy and then make more of that linkage that I did on the right side. So yeah, I looked up this stuff. It's called teleoperation. It's where you're able to operate a machine with your own telekinetic movements. So that's what this is. I've become like somewhat obsessed with it here recently, just by making a couple of builds that I've been doing with these grots. But yeah, so I just take bits of rod, bits of sprue, bits of spears, gun parts, ning bolt, and then there's a couple of little pieces. I don't know if those are like servos or motors or something like that. But I had these symmetrical looking pieces that I could take. These are from the Admech Sicarian bitz as well. I use those for my knobs, but that's a completely different video. The remainder, I think, is going to be just the basing. Yeah, well, you can see this is before I cleaned up the flashing on his feet. Right now he looks like the army man from Toy Story. And yet another Toy Story reference here. So for basing, I like to use this Vallejo earth texture stuff. There are a couple of different companies that make it. AK Terrains also has a couple that I use. They've got asphalt that I use and a couple of others, I think the snow. But the Vallejo earth texture is a good kind of medium go-to. I use it a lot for most of my basing. It's a nice little paste. You can see I'm just kind of painting it on there, and then it dries hard eventually after a few hours. In 24 hours it's completely dried hard and becomes like a 3D thing. So you can use it as a little bit as glue as well, so you can put little objects in there, and that's kind of what I did with this guy here, and we'll see that more here in a second. And yeah, one thing, you just got to make sure you clean your brush thoroughly and use a crappy brush, because it's a lot of sand and stuff in there. So I knew I wanted to put a couple of other characters out there. Originally, this entire time I was planning on putting something in the claw itself, I think, was what one of my major plans was. A winged Tyrannid Prime was what I was going to use there. It seems like a lot of people are just kind of getting rid of those. I have like, I don't know, I got 2 or 3 of those off of eBay for a handful of dollars. But ultimately, it's kind of too big. It would have been a lot of work to make it actually work because they're monopose, so I would have had to make the wings somehow fold up. So I moved on from that. I knew I wanted to use this stupid looking snotling that's picking its nose. This thing is just hilarious, so I knew I had to use that. I kind of decided, let's do a little bit of symbolism here, right? So we're doing the Grot Revolushun, and that's what I want to be telling in my story here. So I took the snot picker that I knew I was going to use, and I put him on the back of what I then decided was a runt herd. Like, that's like the ultimate symbol of the oppression of the Grots, right? So have his whip sitting there in the mud, and you know, it's simple, it's effective, it works, and it's not too distracting, but it also, like, when you look at it, you're like, oh, that's cool. So obviously I had to cut off its belly and its nip ring. You know, I held on to the nipple ring. Who knows when I'm going to need to, you know, pop a nipple ring on somebody. But then I needed to flatten the guy, obviously, to put him on his belly, and then cut him, glued, reposed the arms, good to go. And then as far as the rest of the basing, just a little bit of corrugated metal, which I've talked about this before, using the toothpaste squeezer and some bits of old can, and then some scaled barbed wire, and obviously that's cork there for the broken up rockcrete. So that pretty much does it for the base, and I think that pretty much does it for everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this bad boy, and so let's get on to the paints phase. Alright folks, so here we are, fully done, finally, a month in the making, fully painted, and turned out pretty sweet. We'll give a size comp and everything. Here's the original Gaz. I think it turned out like a pretty good match here. These guys look like a couple of twinsies showing up, best friends at 3rd grade or something. But yeah, I think I've talked enough on this video. We're going on like 23 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and just show some pictures and some spinnies, and we'll catch you on the next one. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm gonna keep making videos like this. I love this Grot Revolushun thing that I'm starting to do, and I've got plenty more kitbashes that are going. So thanks for stopping by, and really appreciate you guys watching the show, and we'll catch you next time. See you.